Sorry, I don't have any fancy music for my time lapse. I don't actually know how to do that. I'm going to have to learn how to do that. So I've worked for maybe 20 minutes right now, and all I'm doing right now is just sort of defining the shapes and looking to see where my lights and darks are going to go. I've shaded some of the milk can, but not very much of it yet. I do want to remember that it is reflective, not as much as the shiny pot, but you're going to see a little image in there, so I want to make sure not to cover that in. Also, you might notice that my pencil looks a little bit funky because I did use a knife to sharpen it a tiny bit more. I don't like them when they are sharpened like they are when you get them. Just not enough surface for me, so I like to make it a little bit bigger. And I do have two pencils. I thought they were going to be pretty much the same, but the lighter one is much softer than the darker one, and this is the one that you have. So it's actually the better pencil. I prefer it. They both say 6B, but one of them is lying because they're not exactly right. So I'll show you a few more minutes of time lapse, and that'll be the end of the first video. Well, I've worked for maybe 15, 20 minutes more, and there are a couple of things I forgot to tell you. One is that even though I said to put a paper under your hand so you don't smudge, I don't have one up here, but you should. The reason I don't have one is because I'm using an easel and it's harder for me to put the paper there because it just kind of slides off. But I do have charcoal on my hands and it is smudging on there. You can get rid of those smudges by using your kneaded eraser. But if you let them get too deep or you cram them in too much, you will not be able to erase them. So charcoal's not as bad as ink trying to get rid of it, but it is more permanent than a pencil would be. So you want to be careful, because if I were to go back here to my edge where the dark part of the milk can is and try to erase that now, you would still be able to see a ghost image. So you want to make sure that your underdrawing is exactly as you want it to be before you start any charcoaling. Secondly, I know that some of you are going to say, but this paper has texture. Yeah, it has texture on purpose. That's because it holds the charcoal better. Those little teeth on the paper pick up that charcoal, so it allows it to stick better. And each side's going to be slightly different because one of the sides is going to have a concaved and the other side's going to have a convexed bump surface, but it doesn't really matter which side you use. I never really have found a difference between the two, so just choose one. Lastly, you will notice that I am beginning to show some thickness with those the areas that are really, really thin in the picture, but you don't want to just make them stay a line. So rather than actually draw the whole shape with two lines, just look as you're shading it to see where the highlight and the shadow fall. I believe the shadow is going to be on the left-hand side because of the fact that the light is coming from the right-hand side, and so the highlight will be on the other side. As well, there's this little connector area here, and when you look at the photo, you can't really tell what it looks like. So all you want to do there is put some light and some shadow in the way that you're seeing it. So you're sort of indicating the shape without drawing it exactly, and that's perfectly fine. That's what you're going to do with many of the shapes that you can't see very well. Lastly, as I said in our class time, you're going to let things just fade away on the edges. That does not apply to your squash or your pumpkins, but on the cloth, you don't have to put every single little detail in there. So you can pick and choose how much of that you want to have in there. So I'm already beginning to let that fade away, and I know that I'll let it fade away at the top and the bottom. So this is the end of the first video, and there will be more coming.